Hey everyone, Doc Progeny here. Today I'm going to be doing a couple of things. First, I've been asked, how on earth do you run SQL queries on a Progeny database, or SQL statements, I should say as well. Secondly, how do I do bulk updates like values in a table or in a flat field, or how do I change things in a lookup table? Well, I'm going to kind of do the latter of those two. So let's start by looking at what I'm going to change. So I'm in a standalone Progeny database here. I am looking at a lookup table. So the first thing is a lookup table, simple values, 1, 2, 3. I want to change this one to something else. So how do I do that? Well, I can do it in the client here quite easily. But how would I do that in using SQL? But also more importantly, once I've made that change, how can I change all the other values in the database, in the table as well? So I'm looking at a simple trio here. I've got two individuals where I've entered some data. You'll see here, it's a test table for this demo. You'll see in the first column, it's that lookup table. So it's showing value 1. That's what I'm going to want to change. So you see there's a couple of 1s here for this individual. For this individual, I've got 3 and then a 1. So what I want to do is bulk change that, but also change the value of the lookup table. So I'm going to close out of Progeny because obviously if I have Progeny open, it's going to have some locks in place and then it causes some chaos. So I'm going to then move over to another application, which is Sybase Central for a SQL Anywhere 17. Now, I will say before you start doing any SQL on your database, be a little cautious. You can make huge numbers of changes in your database with a single statement. So before you start, please make a backup or archive your database so that if you really make a complete disaster of it, at least you can go back. So this application typically is what most of you who are using the multi-user edition of Progeny will have. So if you're working with that sort of system, this will normally be on your database server. So separate on a server, you will need access to that server. So you probably need to talk to IT. For those of you who are working on a standalone edition, I'm afraid this is less available, so you might have some issues. So how do I connect to SQL for a specific database? Well, I come up to Tools, I go to SQL Anywhere 17, and then I go down to Open Interactive SQL. So you'll see as I come to this page, on this particular database, it's standalone, so I have to go to the file and enter username and password. If you're running the database server as a database server normally, it'll typically be this. So again, you'll need user ID and password. This will only work for the Progeny ID, so please make sure you log in with that. If you don't, it won't let you anyway. The server name is actually the database service name, and then the database name is the database name before the .db. You do not need the .db. Okay, so that's how you would do it if you're a multi-user client. So I am going to go back to where I was, which is just a simple standalone. So, and this will connect me to the database. So you'll see here on the tab, it shows the database. If I want to start running some SQL without causing any chaos, this is actually fairly simple. All this is going to do is show me all of the fields in the database. So simply select all, basically from prog group std, the dictionary all. If I run that, it's going to give me a long list of all the fields in Progeny. So, and you can do things like order them by ID, by name, and so forth. Okay, so how do we do the kind of find and replace within lookup tables and within tables that we discussed? Well, here's some code I prepared earlier. So I've got 2 lines of code here. The first is actually working with the tables. So what it's saying is update user table F6. So that's the table we were viewing in Progeny. Set the subfield F3 to ZZ where it was where it was 1 previously. So this will go through your database, look at this table, wherever the F3 field is 1, it will become ZZ. Now, you'll notice that the row below is the F3 field. So actually, we're talking about the same thing here between these 2 lines. What this second line does, it goes to the lookup table F3, where it's 1, it sets it to ZZ. So it's only making a single change to the lookup table, but it's going to make quite a lot of changes to the actual table itself. Okay, so I'm going to run that. and that's going to go off and it will have run that code for you. Can't see much here. What we're going to see is really happening back in Progeny. So I am going to simply close SQL again. Again, I am closing it so that the connection is disconnected. I'll open up Progeny 10 here, log into Progeny, and we should see what's happened. So first of all, let's go and look at the lookup table. Okay, so now 1 has become ZZ and the order has changed. If we then go to the pedigree itself, open up the pedigree, pull up the table, the data sheet, you'll see in this first one, there's both have become ZZ. And in the second one has become ZZ. So you can see we've done a bulk change of that field in the lookup table. It didn't have to be a lookup table. It could have been text, it could have been a date, it could have been whatever you wanted to change. But in this case, I wanted to do 2 things. I think that shows you quite quickly you can make quite big changes across the database. It's quite nice with the lookup table because sometimes you'll get change in DNA variants that you want to make across the whole database, and this works for that. Okay, so if you've liked this, could you please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and then you'll be able to continue receiving alerts about new videos that I made. And that's all for today. Have fun and enjoy your SQL time.